Hey guys, it is Esti and Justin from Not For Long Media.
If you like the video you're about to watch, be sure to like the video itself and subscribe to our channel. We really appreciate it.
Enjoy the video, and also don't forget to follow us on our socials at Not For Long Media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
I'll tell you what, and we'll roll into the podcast on that statement. Back in my hockey days, man, I do miss the smell of the hockey bag or the bag.
It's horrific, but it's comforting.
It is. Like my hands, I'll never forget. I went to Bob Hartley hockey camp. I think it was at York Penn State College.
Wow.
Went to that camp, the stay away camp. We stayed in the library, I believe, and we just stayed on cots. I'll never forget it. And my gloves weren't drying properly, so I ended up getting like chafed thumbs and like staph infection on my freaking thumbs. Man, I was like scarred. I'm like, oh man,
it's a petri dish.
It is a petri dish. I miss the old days, man. I mean, I know you're still playing in the men's league. Are you not?
Yeah, I'm still going. We just finished our summer season. We just won our third straight championship in 5th and 6th seasons. So yeah, we have a great team. I mean,
I think when the football career is over, I'm going to strap them back on, to some extent and play. I always, it was my dream to play in the NHL, really before the NFL, always was.
Yeah.
And, I was just solid, you just never, you got to be, maybe now with my size and a little bit more ability to move, I would have been a little bit better prospect. But at the time, at that age, I was like a football player on skates, I could move well and could pass the puck, but, just didn't have the it that these guys have, at a young age. Plus I'm playing house league in Bucks County is much different than some other things.
Yeah. Some of these kids now, like my son's playing tier 1, and some of these kids are fucking outrageous.
Yeah.
And he's a midget. He plays midget now. He's U16 first year. And like, I'll put on the equipment for practice once in a while, so I can get a better perspective on how long they're taking to release shots, and so I can help them. And some of these kids can fucking shoot it, man. I'm like, Jesus Christ, you're 14 and you're bombing it.
Yeah,
the sticks help too, but
they do. And there's just more prep. There's more work. The kids are dialed in. They all have coaches.
Yeah,
it's like the quarterbacks now, right? Like, and it's the quarterback world. Like everything's 7-on-7. Everyone has a personal coach. That's why there's more quarterbacks than ever.
Yeah. And the kids, like, they go on YouTube and watch the stick skills, and then they go in their garage and do it, and then they put it on the ice, and it's crazy.
Yeah. Then they videotape themselves, send it to their buddies.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
All right, we'll roll into it, bro. I appreciate you.
Let's do it. No problem.
All right, Jason Myrtetus is in the house today. Jason, how you doing, man?
What's going on, Colin?
Dude, it's great to see you. But before we dive into anything, though, can you take us through the wall behind us of just the goalie helmets, the guitars, the memorabilia that means so much to you? I've gotten to know you over the years. And again, we'll put this on our social media. You're able to see Jason's wall behind him. And I've gotten to know that you're a rock enthusiast, and you love the goaltending position, and you love the winter time, and you have, it's a great, no, I love it. And it was, back in the day for me, I grew up listening to you and Harry Mays, and, that was what I listened to when I was in college, and I was at University of Florida, and I wanted my Philly fix, and then I transferred to Temple, and Harry had me by the studio, and that's where we met for the first time, and have stayed in touch over the years. And I'm a huge Flyers fan. I'm going all over the map here, but let's rewind this back and back me up. Talk about the wall behind you.
So yeah, the guitars behind me, there's two Les Pauls there, a Gibson SG. There is a couple acoustics, and then the one which is over my left shoulder there is a guitar that was given to me by Dimebag Darrell, the late Dimebag Darrell of Pantera. So I got to know those guys when I was doing rock radio. And I was one of the first shows doing a metal show that played them on the radio. So I got to know him, and he gave that to me and signed it to me. So that's a great piece right there. And then I'm infatuated with gear. That's why I decided to be a goalie. I think there's two boxes. Every goalie checks one of these two boxes as to why he goes in the net. Either A, he had older brothers that played, so they stuffed a little brother between the net to shoot on, or you're infatuated with the equipment. In my case, it was both. I have two older brothers that are twins that are 5 years older that both played. So they stuffed me in the net, and I was just like that mask, that Bernie mask right there. That just hooked me. And I love masks. I got them all over the place. And that collection there, some great ones. Marty's on there. Patrick Waugh from both his Avalanche mask, his 93 mask from playing with Montreal when they won the Cup, the last Canadian team. Van Beesbrook's up there, Hobby Bullen, the Bullen wall mask, and Cujo. So there's some great ones up there. So I love it. And then here too, even you got the sim steering wheels here, so I do my sim racing, and so I'm in my home studio. Like, this is my home studio, and there's a futon over there that is basically my bed. It's basically my apartment, man. So like, I'm either running races, Formula One races, playing the guitar, or podcasting for the most part.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
Well, let me add this. The third reason why kids become goalies would probably be, hey, the goalie's hurt this game, or
Yeah.
we need to fill in too. Is that the third reason? Is that
Yeah, or when you're really young and playing, sometimes they don't have a goalie, and every kid plays goalie for a game or two, and then
There you go.
somebody gets in there and goes, "Wow, I really like this," because it takes a different breed, right? Like, you've been an alpha athlete your whole life, so and when you play at a high level, it's hard. It takes a different breed for goalie because, it's the ultimate pressure because you're the last line of defense, and when you make a mistake, a horn goes off, and everybody cheers or they boo. So that's part of it. But this, as an alpha athlete, you want to dictate the terms. But as a goalie, it's really difficult to do that because you're reacting to your environment. So what does a goalie do that is an alpha athlete that wants to dictate, but you can't because the nature of the position is reactionary? Then you become this is an unofficial study, but I think a lot of goalies that when they're done playing, or even when they aren't playing, they develop OCD because they want to control everything else. So you control every minute of your game day routine, every other element, because you can't control the athletic part being on the ice because it's a reactionary position. And I've talked to a lot of guys that have played in the NHL and at various levels, and they tend to agree. I think that, it's hard when you're an alpha athlete and you want to dictate and you can't, and you have to react. So, I mean, we can influence, a goalie can influence where a shooter shoots, or how you play certain things, but overall it's a very reactionary position, and there's a weird pressure that comes with it that once it gets its hooks in you, you're part of the union for life.
It's an interesting topic for sure. I'm that guy on Instagram that follows all the goalie pad, Instagrams. I follow the goalie stuff on Twitter. I see you're like the only guy that follows it with me, so it's fun.
Yeah.
It's such a cool thing. I think that back in the day, like I still remember like every goalie's pads with the Flyers, like Roman Cechmanik's pads. I'll never forget them. The red and black. I mean, the orange and black. Excuse me. Like, I was at the game with the Rangers when he flipped over and knocked the puck at Madison Square Garden. My dad and I are right there. I'll never forget that moment. I'm all over the place again because I'm a kid.
The orange knee roll with the black pad. Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah. So where did you get the helmets though? I know you've been involved with the Flyers for years now. Did the helmets fall into your lap? Did you trade for them, and these memorabilia items that you bought?
Most of those are actually 1/3 size. And EA, Electronic Arts, back in the day, they did this series of masks, the 1/3 size masks of like the great goalies of that time, around 91, 92, 93 to 94. And like, there's a Richter up there too. And they put these out, but nobody, Franklin does them now, but they're not 1/3. They're a lot smaller. They're probably like 1/8. And they're just not nearly as cool as those ones are. So a lot of those are EA, and then Pinnacle and EA put out another line which is slightly smaller. It's 1/4 scale. So some of those are 1/4 scale, some of them are 1/3. The Bernie's a full scale. And so I'm not going to go out and get like the full mass of all the ones I like because it can get quite expensive. But I've talked to like Franny Drummond, who's the mask painter that does Carter Hart's mask and did Steve Mason, does a lot of NHL guys. And I'm like, can we find a way to make plastic molds of these mini versions so we can put them out? And something that we've talked about, we're trying to kind of figure it out because I think there's a market out there for collectors and stuff. And the goalie mask is such a cool item. And it's one of the things where, a player in sports can really express himself through his mask and his equipment. So, like Marty Brodeur never really changed his. It was always
simple.
Very simple, yeah. Not really much change to it. Some guys go totally huge change year to year, or multiple times in a year. Van Beesbrook has one of those masks that like nobody else ever duplicated, and Tim Thomas was the same way. It was a different style mask with a different cage. So you can tell a lot, I think, about how a goalie wears this mask. I always liked like Luongo, like had this like an understated like white light tones to his mask, and I thought they were always really cool. And Carey Price has done some really awesome Canadians masks, so I'd love to get my hands on ones like that, and then some like Hextall ones as well. So, but yeah, I've gone through years like chipping away, finding those on like eBay and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique thing, and like you said, it's a way for them to be creative in a sport where, and I played in the sport where you're uniform. And I don't know what goes on in hockey. I'm sure it's this way, but for us, if you go out to warmups and you come out and your pants aren't rolled up all the way, or something's not right in the color scheme, or your cleats are not the color they should be for the game, I think we can wear black or white, uh, unless it's like a certain game where you can wear a certain cleat, like the fundraiser, the charity games that a lot of people see. We get warned by the refs, and then if you come back out after warmups with that on, we get fined. And it's a lot of money. It's a couple thousand, and that's a part of the league. It is what it is. We signed up for it. I have no problem with it.
Yeah.
It's not the case in the NHL because, like I said, it's the only way any player can express themselves is really what's on the goalie's head and what's on his legs.
Yeah, I mean, with that part, the only thing that they police in regards to that, nothing that's on it, but just the size. Every piece of equipment goes to a guy named Kay Whitmore, who actually was an NHL goalie. And he inspects every piece of equipment, and based on your body type and your body's dimensions, whether and the dimension goes from the knee to the hip, the full length of the leg, the width of the pad can only be 11 inches, no longer 12. They've shrunken down the chest protector to the upper body, the chesty. So that stuff all goes to the league and gets signed off on. Like you can see, like I have some pictures of like Carter Hart's pad, and you see a KW on it in Sharpie. So the rest can inspect it to make sure the equipment's legit. So no guys can kind of cheat and wear bigger equipment.
What's this do health-wise for the guys?
Well, they didn't like when the chesty went smaller because you got to wear some sort of padding underneath that now, like a shirt with padding on it, because it wasn't, especially in the arms, it wasn't sufficient padding. So guys were getting really bruised up bad. So they're all wearing some kind of, something underneath now, a base layer of protection as well. So it's pretty crazy, but they'll let you put anything you want on the. I'm surprised the goalie hasn't gone out and sold the advertising on the front of a pad yet. I'm waiting to see that. What's
Could
to
they
stop them? I don't know. I mean, they're selling some advertising on helmet and jersey now, but can an individual goalie go out and let AAA sponsor, and put the AAA logo on their pads? Who knows?
Do you have a problem with all the sponsorship stuff? Because I know a lot of people are, get off my yard crowd. I don't have a problem with it. I think
as long as it doesn't turn into a NASCAR suit, I'm good. Like with stuff everywhere, or like some of the European leagues. As long as it doesn't go that far, it's been tasteful so far, and I get it. Like it's bringing more money into the game, so I don't have a problem with it. I'm all for players getting paid, and if they get half of what comes in because of that, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, that's great. That's tremendous. All right, we'll transition to your career, Jason. I mean, obviously you're doing, the Flyers Daily podcast. I love listening to it. It's been great. I suggest everyone to go check it out because it's a quick hitter. Some of them are longer than others, but I love it because you can just pop on and listen to 15, 20 minutes and you get to listen to kind of what happened if you didn't catch the game or if you caught the game and you want more insight. We'll get into that though. I want to talk about your career, your journey, man. You went to Penn State. You're a local Philadelphia guy. What got you into radio? What was your passion that drawing you into radio, media, broadcasting?
It was really happenstance. Like I wasn't one of those kids that wanted to be on the radio. I never even considered it. And the only time a bug kind of got put in my ear about it, I had a teacher in high school. He was a public speaking teacher named Tony Rotundo, and I developed a real good bond with him. He was a real good guy, helped me out a lot, and he was my public speaking teacher, and he loved me. And he was just like, you should consider a career in radio. You're not afraid to speak in public and in front of people. You got a great voice, and it's just so he just kind of planted the bug. It wasn't like a big thing, a big conversation or anything. And then I went to Penn State, and I declared my major as forestry. Then I realized there was way too much math and way too much science, and I stunk at that. So I changed my major to broadcast cable communications at the time. And I was working at a beer distributor, and this guy came in, and he had a radio station hat on, and he was the morning guy on a rock radio station. Paid with a check, so I saw his name, and I said, I was thinking about doing an internship, and he's like, come tomorrow after the show, meet with we'd love to have the beer guy as an intern. I went that day, offered me the internship, took it on the spot, and I've been in radio for 27 years. It's,
wow.
Just kind of happened, and I don't know what else I would even be able to do. I don't really do radio anymore per se, like I did, but this is an extension of broadcasting, and to me it's just content creating, right? So that's the only thing that I've really ever done. So it's it all happened by accident, but I'm happy with it.
You were in the rock and roll world there for a while, and
Yeah.
you worked for a prominent radio station in Philly in rock and roll. What were some of those experiences like? Because obviously you have that passion for music, and then all of a sudden you have that passion for sports. And then how did that cross over into one into another? And then all of a sudden you're a host of midday shows and you're one of the major voices in Philadelphia.
Yeah, when sports radio launched in the late '80s, I was into it and I liked it a lot. And then I just started my career in rock radio. That's where I interned, and I found my way here to Philly pretty quick, from Penn State, and I worked at YSP, and they were owned by Infinity Broadcasting, which also owned WIP. And when Tom Bigby, who was the late program director of WIP and really shaped that format, not only for WIP but for the country, he had a quadruple bypass, and he voiced all the commercials. They needed somebody to go over and voice it. And my boss, Tim Sabian, who ran the Stern channels on Sirius XM, asked me if I wanted to do it. So I went over, and I would just go over a couple days a week and voice a bunch of commercials, and to a producer there, and it just kind of one thing led to another. And my years at YSP were awesome. We had so much fun. It was like being a rock star without playing an instrument. We had a blast. We had a great group of people. We had Cousin Ed and Matt and Huggy, and it was the Stern years. And so we kicked ass, and we partied hard, and we had a ton of fun, and got to meet a lot of rock stars that, I couldn't even imagine that I would have met. I love Metallica, right? And I'm hanging out with Metallica and Pantera, and I interviewed Robert Plant, and just crazy stuff that that I would have never dreamed would have happened to me or anybody that I know. And then I moved into sports radio, and it was just kind of it was a refreshing change, because the rock format they took a lot of life out of it and a lot of creativity out of it, and became very cookie cutter. This is read a liner card, and I wanted to purge a lot more than that, and talk radio was the way to do it, because there's a lot more words getting said. In talk radio, when you're on, there's no going, okay, here's Led Zeppelin.
Yeah,
you're the content. So that was liberating, daunting at times, but a lot more cathartic to be able to get so much more out and show more of your personality and stuff. So I enjoyed doing both, but the talk radio experience was a lot more being an entertainer, and I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like more fulfilling in that sense, where you got to grasp there's an audience, but some more sounds like a hell of a time hanging with rock stars. Is there someone that sticks out to you that you're telling stories about all the time, about your interaction, with when you were working in rock, that came and visited, and you're like, hey, this happened or that happened, or you still have a good relationship with somebody?
Well, I was tight with the guys from Pantera, because I kind of, when they were coming up and I was doing a metal show and all that. But I went to dinner one night with another guy from the radio station, and Zach Wild, and another guitarist in his band, and he's the guitarist for Ozzy at the time as well. And we went to some like Smith and Walensky's in Rittenhouse Square, right? And it's all like lawyers and stuff in the bar, and they have that rotating door. And we come walking in, and Zach comes walking in, huge beard, biker-looking dude, chains hanging off him, and he's bombed already. He walks in the circular door and just falls on the floor. And there's all these lawyers and stuff in there, and they have no idea who he is, right? He's a guitarist for Ozzy. He's one of the greatest guitar players on the planet. And it was just, he ordered about $1,500 worth of food and didn't eat a bite of it. He ordered for the whole table. Everybody's getting filet on the bone, his shrimp tower, everything. And he never ate a bite of any food, and just sat there and drank Beck's beers the whole time. And we had a night. It was a blast. So that was a great night. But, interviewing Robert Plant was off the charts. That was off the charts. I got the shit kicked out of me for doing it. But his tour manager, attacked me. But
what was your favorite part about that interview? What stood out?
Well, the way it happened, it was the second show of a tour that he did, a solo tour. He had like all these different musicians. Like I think a guitarist from The Cure was on the tour, and he wasn't doing any interviews. So I got there early. It was at the Electric Factory on Memorial Day weekend of like 2000, and I found the tour manager, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, I'd love to talk to some guys from the band. I'm doing my show from here tonight." He's like, "Yeah, no problem." I said, "What about Robert?" And he said, "Sure." I'm like, really? Okay. He's like, just be ready. I don't know when it's going to happen. Just be ready with your recorder and we'll do it. So and he goes, just hang out by the soundboard. So I'm hanging out by the soundboard. It's sound check. And the band's on stage. Robert's not on stage. And then this guy, older guy, comes out and he's there talking. It's a guy named Bill Kerbishley who managed Led Zeppelin and the Stones and the Who and all that, legendary guy. And then Robert comes out and comes behind the soundboard while they're rehearsing. And he's telling them what to do. So rehearsal's over before the show and the sound check. And Robert walks out behind the board, just walks over to me because you want to do this now? And I go, yeah. Boom, I turn on my recorder. I got my marketing guy there taking pictures of me and Robert Plant. I do like a 15, 20-minute interview with him. I wrap it up before I can even turn off my recorder. The tour manager jacks me from behind, is screaming and yelling at me, trying to punch me, kicking me, cut my leg. And Michael Lesner from Electric Factory comes over and breaks it up. And he must have thought like I harassed him or something. I'm like, nah, he came over to me. And he kicked us out. He kicked us out. He kicked, so I was with YSP. He kicked MMR out. He kicked Y100 out of the show. I go outside in the parking lot and I call Tim Sabian. I go, Tim, here's what happened. I tell him the whole story. And he's like, wait a minute, you got an interview with Robert Plant? I go, yeah. He goes, get back to the station, cut it up, get it on the air. Great job. So I'm like, oh, I thought I was going to get fired, you know? And then, so that all happens. And I got these pictures with Robert Plant. And the digital cameras weren't out yet. The next day, YSP added Opie and Anthony to the lineup. And that camera went from Philadelphia to New York to take pictures of Opie and Anthony wearing a Phillies hat with a patch cheesesteak in their hand, and they double exposed all my Robert Plant pictures. So I'm faded in the background talking to Robert Plant, and Opie and Anthony are holding the patch cheesesteak in the picture, so they're all ruined.
Wow.
Yeah, so great story, but it was an awesome. I still have the interview somewhere. I got to find it and bust it out and post it on like YouTube or something one day. But yeah, crazy. And he was awesome. Like, he was a great interview. Yeah. So
that's good times. Backstage over the years, I'm sure you've been to some great concerts. What's one that comes out?
When Ozfest 2000, either 2000 or 2001, I was at a couple of shows with, I knew some guys that were on the tour. And when it was in Philly, actually, at whatever they call it, BB&T Pavilion, I don't know, Blockbuster Pavilion at the time, I was with Pantera for a couple of days around that, and I was watching Pantera from the side of the stage with Dimebag's guitar tech, and Dimebag comes over, and in between every song, we were doing shots of Black Tooth Grin, Crown Royal, and a splash of Coke, so we were feeling good. And he comes over before they play a song, he goes, get him out there for this song, get him out there. I'm like, what are you talking about? And they went out and they started playing This Love. And there's a part in that song where everybody kind of flies out and does the backup vocals, like guys in other bands and roadies. So I go out there and I'm flying out there and doing it. And you know, he's doing the guitar solo and he's punching me while he's playing. And I at the time, you know, we had like flip phones. And when the show was over, I must have had like 150 messages from people going, what were you doing on stage with Diamond Panther? You know, it was crazy. But we were bombed, and it was just what a night. You know, 50,000 people inside there, and I'm on stage hanging out with Pantera. It was nuts.
That's awesome. That's such a cool story. It's such good stuff. You know, the media journey. I think that's the fun part of being a part of it. There's definitely some unknown to it, right? Especially being involved in sports. Obviously, being involved in music, there's a lot of unknown to it.
Yeah.
Let's transition back to the sports side, though, right? There's unknown how you're going to start this thing. You make the transition from music. And here you are in one of the biggest sports media worlds, and really, honestly, the most diehard fan base, period, when it comes for 4for4 and freaking Union fans. And, you know, you got everything. People really want to wrap their arms around everything here. Penn State, Temple, Notre Dame fans, obviously. Like, people want to wrap their arms around sports here and embrace it. I know this is a really vague question, but what's the journey been like through the Philadelphia sports world where you started, you know, let's say what, mid 2000s when you started in it?
Yeah, well, in 2000, I was at YSP for 6 years, and then I started at WIP in 01. Well, late 2000, I started at WIP in one capacity or another, and I was there until 2011. But it was wild. You know, at WIP, I did some on-air work. I was more behind the scenes and in programming and, like, running the station. Which was a whole nother different ball game because, you know, that was high price and high ego talent there, you know, from Angelo Cataldi and Howard Eskin and everybody. that, it was a journey, and an experience just to deal with those guys on a day-to-day basis. So that was, that's about as crazy of a management job as you can have. Imagine, like, you listen to Howard, you listen to Angelo, and off the air they're different, but similar. So
Is there
crazy.
is there some sort of like clashing, or you're just trying to manage all the personalities and manage all the support behind them?
Yeah, I mean, I never had a problem with any of the talent that I managed. Some people did that came in. I didn't, because those guys all ended up really wanting the same thing. They just wanted to be supported, and they wanted you to do what you said you were going to do and support the show and help them as much as you could. And I just had a natural ability to do that. I was an idea guy, so I could always, help in that regard. I was always a really skilled digital editor, so I could help them with, those kind of content on their show and stuff like that. So, I never, I got along great with Ange, and when I was there, at one point the marketing director wasn't even allowed in the morning show meetings because they didn't get along, So, and I think part of Angelo's contract in late years with Bigby was that he didn't have to meet with Bigby anymore. So, but no, I always got along with him well, and Howard I got along with well. He'll still call me from time to time, and he just calls, "Hey, what's up, genius?" And so so it was interesting. And then I moved more on air stuff, and so yeah, it was a lot different, and the industry has changed a lot. I don't like the way it's changed. Sports talk, the hot takers and the disingenuous stuff, it really kind of irritates me. Where the format has gone, and where the fact that it's singular in topic all the time, and just Eagles. To me, that's not the way to do it. But it is what it is. But I've been out for almost 2 years now from doing a daily show, and it's been liberating.
It was unique. So I did buddies with Mike Gill, as you know, and Mike, and worked with Mike, and I filled in. This was obviously before I was in Carolina. I did radio, 3 straight days leading up to Thanksgiving, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday with Mike. Drove up, did it, and had a ball. But I came home after and said, I don't know if I could do this. We literally talked from 2 to 6, and it was great. And I have great rapport with Mike, and he's a good dude. He's a great pro at his job. But I don't know if I could do this, 360 days a year.
Yeah.
It's a grind. It really is a grind.
Yeah.
And everyone wants to be.
Everything's prep. Every minute of your day, it's like you're always prepping. You never get to unplug.
No. And it's unique in the sense that, yeah, you are always grinding, and it's kind of your hobbies kind of match your job. So you're going to watch sports and have a good time. But if you want to go the next level with it and create some uniqueness, you kind of got to be bold, right? Some of the big Philly ones, or even some of the biggest national guys, like Cowherd gets ripped, but the guy's bold, and he's very dialed in into the world, and it pairs it with sports. And, that's why I've admired his work. He gets ripped in Philly, but I understand why people get a little frustrated with him. But I think just the preparation with the way he delivers is really unique, right? It's not cookie cutter. It doesn't seem like a hot take guy to me, even though there's a lot of people that say he's a hot take guy. I don't know.
Yeah. You can't be normal.
No, you can't.
If you're normal, it's too boring. Like, you have to have an idiosyncratic personality. If you're a normal guy, you have to have things that you view very differently than normal, and to be creative too, because the job isn't about knowing, Pete Rose's batting average in 1978 with the Cincinnati Reds. The job is entertaining, and being able to go on for 20 hours a week or whatever it is that you do, and be entertaining for 4 hours a day. It's a lot. People go, "Oh, you only work 4 hours a day." But no, it's not just 4 hours a day. It's 24 hours a day, because
you're on for those 4 hours.
Yeah, and it's like I remember watching Ange when he would get done a show. And like during commercials and stuff, he'd be just as amped as he was on the air to keep the energy level up. And when he got done a show, he'd fall into a chair. He was shot. The way you got to do it is that's you got to pour everything into it and spill your bucket every day, and you're only as good as your last show. So, it's tough. It's a grind. There's no doubt about it. And the thing about it is, it almost takes a little bit of enjoyment of sports away too, because it becomes a job. When I was doing rock radio, it going to concerts was not fun anymore for a while, but going to sporting events was. And then when I went to sports, going to sporting events was work, and going to concerts was fun. It's just the way it is. So, but I mean, all said and done, you're not wheelbarrowing a pile of rocks up a hill, to move it from one side of a parking lot to another. So it's a fortuitous way to make a living, no doubt about it.
You've worked with some great personalities over the years. Obviously, Harry Mays is a friend. Who are some of the guys you've really enjoyed working with over the years in sports radio, specifically in the Philadelphia area?
Yeah, I loved working with Harry. We just had this chemistry that worked, and it was, there wasn't hot takes. It was just two guys like shooting it at the bar, and he was a great guy to work with. I really enjoyed working with him. When I was at WIP, there were some good guys that I worked with there, and over the years, I loved Rob Cherry. It was a guy that I just enjoyed him on and off the air. And then, Rob Ellis is a guy that I worked with at both stations. And
yep.
So, those guys, I worked with Anthony at both stations. And, me and Conklin always had a lot of fun together. Between him doing impressions and me doing crappy impressions, you never knew what was going to happen. So, over the years, a lot of people that I enjoyed working with for sure.
Let's transition to the podcast world now, and then we'll get into Flyers talk about your podcast. What's the next thing? Because this podcast world is flooded. I've been in it since 2017. You've been in it for a while, right? From probably the beginning days of it, doing radio, and they turn your guys' radio shows into podcasts. Actually, if you look back to your and Harry's show, it was the purest, probably 4 for 4 guys sitting around a bar show you would have. Really, truly.
Yeah.
Didn't feel like there's any agenda behind it. It was just like, hey, let's have some good times and just kind of see where it goes. You guys made fun of each other a ton and kind of were different personalities, but had the same interests, specifically with sports, and valued the same things. I digress, but what's next? Because everyone has a podcast, especially post-COVID. Everyone has a voice. We know that with social media. We know that with
sucks.
cancel culture, right? We know that with a lot of different things. Talk about why it sucks, and then where you see it going.
Yeah, everybody having a voice is not a great thing because of exactly that. The negative or the enraged minority becomes the voice that people think everybody thinks with because they're the most vocal. It's the vocal minority of cancel this, cancel that, and everything has gotten too serious because everybody wants to. I think there's a group of people that want to be offended, so everything's gotten just crazy, but that is what it is. But I think the next thing, kind of where I'm moving to, is live video. I think it's 89% of the bandwidth on the internet on a given day is used in watching live video, whether that's YouTube, somebody streaming something. As long as you have good content, people will watch it. And live video, for some reason, people like to watch people broadcast. I don't know. I don't get why. It's not like when we're doing a radio show, we're spinning nickels on our forehead.
Yeah.
But live video is where it's at. Unique content that you can't get anywhere else. The kids are watching people play video games, and if it's good content and you're getting something from it, that's where it's going. And people are more likely, for advertisers of live video, they're more likely to put an action to the advertisement if they see it from a live video than they are if they just heard it. And the numbers support that. So I think that's where it's going. As long as you can create good content and get it to an audience, you'll grow it. Like you said, though, everybody's doing a podcast, but there's a lot of shit content, and some people like shit content. A lot of the podcasts and stuff are from fans, like fan podcasts, and that's not for me. That's just not for me, So I try and do something different. I try to remove the emotion of a fan and be more analytical and level-headed. And it's hard to do sometimes, and I get frustrated too, like with the team, especially last year. And there were moments where I became the fan, but there's a lot of those out there. Fire this guy, fire that guy, acquire this guy, cut that guy, and they're just not feasible, right? It's like when you go to the phones in sports radio. Okay, can we trade our bag of trash for 18 pounds of gold? That's not possible. You got to give something to get something. So, there's a lot out there, but there's a lot of crap out there too.
Yeah.
So if you're good and you have good content, that content's king.
Is that the advice you're giving to young people entering this field? Is content's king and focus on the product?
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about, in the beginning, it's about reps, getting reps to dial in, figure out who you are, first of all, as not who you are as a person, but who you are that you're going to present yourself to an audience. And that takes a while because when you first start, you're trying to be like a petri dish of everybody that you listened to and liked. So there's elements of Stern, there's elements of whatever, this guy or that guy that you listened to growing up, and you're not yourself. And that's not, you're trying to be something you're not. But eventually you get to a point where you can go, okay, this is who I am, and put yourself on display, and it's genuine and real. And that's when you got them. Because if you do that and they like you, even if they don't like it, doesn't matter. If they're entertained by you, if you're giving them something, then it's real. Then that's the point you want to get to, and that just takes time. It just takes reps. Like, I mean, you know this. You've been doing it a while. In the beginning, it's like you're just trying to figure out how to put two words together. You know what I mean? And then, I love the podcast world and the on-demand world because we can talk about shit like this that you could never do on the radio.
Oh, you'd be
can
killing
have long
airtime.
deep dives. Yeah. And you're not worried about a guy tuning in halfway through and going, hey, resetting. Hey, Jason Myrtetus on the Comcast business. You don't do that in podcast. This is just a conversation. If they're here, they're interested in what you're bringing. So I think that's the key, figuring out what you are through the repetitions of doing it, and then finding a way to be relentless and pushing out your content to people and exposing more people to it.
It's a great point. It really is. I completely agree. And I think you can have a niche.
Mm-hmm.
And those niches have huge listeners, huge following. It doesn't have to be like, I'm going to talk Panthers or Eagles or Flyers or Hurricanes, or you can say, I'm just going to talk fourth line centers in the NHL. And you could dominate that. I'm just giving an example.
You could do a podcast on charcoal grilling.
Massive. I listen to a barbecue
audience.
I listen to a barbecue podcast myself, How to Barbecue Right. Malcolm Reed, he's been on the podcast. He was a guy who we just Googled for barbecue stuff because we got a big green egg and we weren't, we were just done with the regular normal recipe. And the guy just had his ducks in the line. Like you're saying, he had great quality content.
Yep.
His videos of how to do it were unlike anything else. He was extremely successful. He is barbecue pitmaster, and he's teaching us guys, people that have no idea what they're doing on a big green egg. And I felt comfortable. And now I listen to his freaking barbecue podcast because they're talking about everything.
Yeah,
I love it.
And you're getting something from it.
Yes, I love it. I learned something new.
You go there, you're like, when you go there to it, you know what the expectation is. So you're like, cool, like give me as much as you can.
Yeah.
And my whole theory on podcasts, especially, there's no length to this. It's when the good content's out, the episode's over.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can be 12 minutes. Sometimes that could be 90. You never know.
Or Joe Rogan, 3-4 hours. I mean,
yeah.
Rogan's really, that's what I wanted to me, like just starting this podcast. I've had 4 or 5 different versions of it. When I got cut from the Giants, the NFL stands for not for long. That's why I started it, 2017. But, again, this is the reinvented version of it with a serious backing behind it and, a push with the team. And that's what it takes. This is not just one person doing it, as you know. But I was like, I want to be like the Rogan situation where you can listen to many different people. You can have Jason Myrtetus on, who is a diehard rock fan and diehard hockey fan and did it his own way and worked his way up. Or you can listen to the women's basketball coach at Georgia Tech, who I met walking down the beach in Destin, Florida. Or you can listen to Christian McCaffrey or Adam Schefter. That's kind of where I wanted to go with it. And it's been fun. And that's the point of all this is like, what are we doing at the end of the day? Are you going to take something from it? And transition to the Flyers Daily. I love it, man. Is it your idea? Where did it start? How'd you come up with it? Because it's a great avenue for Flyers fan to dive in, really hockey fans in general, dive in and listen to what you're doing.
Well, it started actually a couple of years before it actually ever happened. Joe Heller, who was the former VP of marketing with the Flyers, he and I were talking about doing something like that for a couple of years. I just couldn't do it because I was doing the daily radio show. I couldn't commit to, because if I'm going to do it, I got to go all the way in on it and to do it right. And, I didn't want to just put something half-ass out there. So when I got let go, we re-engaged and talked about it and said, all right, let's see if we can dial it in. And we dialed it in, and just as we were kind of like pushing it over the goal line, he resigned and went to another job. But the team loved the idea and the people that were running the team. So, we got it launched, and then we weren't expecting it to do what it did. I know that. And immediately, the numbers just were like this huge, very instantaneous climb, and we were like, wow.
Awesome.
And then of course the league got shut down, and we're like, oh Christ, what do we do now? But I think the league getting shut down when COVID first hit was a blessing, because it allowed us to have a lot of conversations that we wouldn't be able to have during a season. And I always looked at it as my job, because I've been doing, involved with the team for 15 years. There's no player that's been there longer than me. My second year was Giroux's first year. So no player's been there. So I know these guys really well. We have a rapport. They trust me. I'm not going to put their, misuse what they said and without context. So my job is to expose the player's side that's more human than just we got to get pucks deep and work hard and, sports speak type thing. And we had a chance to do that, when the COVID first hit. We were talking about with James Van Riemsdyk, like Tiger King, first time being a parent, and having those conversations and exposing that side of him. And then when the game came back, then we went to a whole nother level, and it's insane. Like, we're now just 2 games into this season, and the level of the podcast is the highest it's ever been. So it continues to grow, and we're top 5, 10. We've been as high as number 2 in the United States in the category on the charts. And the only one I haven't beaten is Spittin' Chicklets and Bastards. I'm coming after them, but
we've had Rear Admiral. We've had Rear on the podcast.
Have you? Yeah. So it's been beyond what I could have expected. And look, I realize I have a massive advantage. I have the full backing of the team behind me, and I can get any player or coach or anything I want whenever I want.
But so do a lot of other teams and organizations. People got the same situation.
Yeah. So, I guess we're doing something right. And, I like to involve the audience as much as possible, because I think that makes them more invested. And, they give me guys like the scouts. Like, you always hear in sports, like, oh, the scouts like this guy, or our scouts don't like that guy. But we never hear from the scout.
I love that. You had one of the scouts on. He was in Anaheim or L.A. last year.
Mike O'Connell.
Yeah, that was great.
LA. Yeah, he's tremendous. And Joachim Grunberg, who's the head of European scouting for the Flyers for the last bunch of years, like getting him on what it's like over there scouting, European players, and now like hitting up Germany, which is now becoming a hotbed with guys like Draisaitl and Stützle and stuff coming into the league. So it's fascinating, and to actually get to hear from them and get a goalie coach on, Kim Dillabaugh. That stuff is awesome. I love it. So, and I think that comes through, that I'm not like faking that I like it. It's real. So
literally, I got a text from my buddies the other day, because we have a Flyers group text. I was watching the game, and someone's like, Myrtetus is like having a ball right now and is going nuts. I guess it was opening night. And I flipped the radio on real quick, and you were just like, the barn's buzzing, the people going, feel it. I was loving it, man. I was loving it.
Yeah, it's awesome. So yeah, it's been fun to do, and it allows me to scratch the itch, which is awesome. And I'll get a message from a guy like Elliot Friedman, who I respect the hell out of, from Sportsnet, saying, hey, I'm listening to your interview with Kim Dillabaugh right now, and just has some questions about it. And, and then at the end of the text conversation, I'm going to put you in 32 thoughts tomorrow. That stuff's pretty cool. So,
Awesome.
And so it's just grown and become really big. It's doing great. I mean, it's charting globally. I think it's #1 in Estonia right now and Ireland. And it's like, what the hell? But I'll take it.
That's great. There's a little village over there just full of Flyers fans just dialing in. Love that.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Where do I go from here? I think I'm going to go with the interviews you've done, right? The COVID interviews. I think it's unique because a lot of us, speaking as a pro athlete, we're bored.
Yeah.
Right. So you get a guy like JVR who's like, oh yeah, absolutely. I'll come on the podcast right now. Like, let's do this. Let's talk about what's going on in COVID. There's opening up because in the NHL, our tight end coach, Ed Foley, who I was with at Temple, he's always like, oh, how'd the press conference last night go in the hockey game? Let me guess. We played hard. We got to play harder, get the pucks in deep. We got to, and he always, kind of bust my chops with it because he knows I'm a huge hockey fan. He's a big Flyers fan as well. But it seems like players now, hockey players, are starting to open it up a little bit. They're probably the last group to come over to say, okay, we can open up a little bit. Do you have that sense as well?
Yeah, I'm starting to see it. And, when Panarin scores that overtime goal and throws the stick into the crowd, like those kind of things, and the league seems to be embracing it a bit.
That's great.
Letting guys start to show their personalities a little bit more. The game had prevented that for so long because the game was always about we, never I. You never hear a guy say, I did this. It's always about we, or always giving credit to the boys, never yourself. And the sport has a way of keeping everybody humble. But, there's some great athletes. You look around, look at a guy like McDavid and Matthews, and it's astounding. And they're starting to show their personality. A guy like Austin Matthews does that a little bit with the mustache and the style and all that stuff. So I think it's good that they're doing that, and I think it's going to help grow the game. And social media presence of some guys I think is good. Other guys I think should get off it, but radio as well. But you look at it and you go, okay, let's get to know these people as people, because this, like as a pro athlete, when you're in season, everything is regimented. When that season all of a sudden stopped for all those guys, it was like, oh my God, what are we doing? Like, I don't have a normal, I'm used to the rigidity of being a pro athlete. Go to practice, take a nap, go to the game at 4 on the first bus on the road, all those things. And now
watch Netflix at this time. I mean, literally for me, on my
structure is gone.
Jason, I try to create structure on my off day just so I have not anxiety, but just no anxiety, like just have a little structure. Okay, today I went to the pool, I got a massage, I'm in the sauna, going for a walk. These are the times. Here's my nap schedule.
Yep.
Like today, no nap. Wasn't feeling it. Go to bed a little earlier. Like this is an off day in season for me, and I should just be like checking out. But that's how my mind is working in season.
Yeah.
And I feel like during COVID,
you need to control the controllable, and that's part of it.
Maybe I would have been a goalie.
Yeah.
Well, football's like that too in a way. You can't control a lot of different things.
Yeah.
God bless these quarterbacks, man. Like they're on a whole nother level. Like,
oh yeah.
I got to look downfield by someone probably the best athlete on the field, pound for pound, is coming to try to rip my head off, while the worst athlete on the field is protecting me. And our offensive linemen and the offensive linemen in the NFL are unbelievable athletes.
Yeah.
But that goes to show you the world of the NFL. I digress.
Von Miller, who's a freak of freaks, right, is lined up across you. This guy is literally like snots flying out of his nose because he's like dying to just smash me into nothing.
Yeah, we played Daniil Hunter this weekend. I mean, he has like unreal amount of sacks, and the week before you're facing Fletcher Cox and a lot. I mean, you're facing the Eagles defensive line is one of the best in the NFL. Yeah, they're loaded. Everyone asks who you face. I'm like, well, it's week to week. I just like peek ahead a little bit and see who the outside backers are and see who the defensive ends are, and that's usually who I'm facing. All right, we'll wrap it up with some Flyers questions here, Jay. Again, appreciate you coming on. Appreciate just shooting the shit with you and catching up. Claude Drew's legacy, where does it stand? Because this is a guy who's a captain. This is a guy who I love. This is a guy who a lot of really true Flyers fans, hockey fans, people who understand the game, really respect, kind of know how the organization's been handled over the last decade plus that he's been there. Some really good times, some times maybe that he was hitting his prime and the team wasn't ready to be in their prime. What's his legacy like as a Philadelphia Flyer?
Yeah, I mean the final chapter's not written yet,
Yeah.
and I think your question's interesting because it depends who you ask, right? If you ask, like you said, educated hockey people on it, they recognize that the guy over 12 years in the league is second in points or fourth in points over a
OV,
12-year period. Right?
Crosby. It's like a ridiculous
Yeah,
lineup.
he's got more than Ovechkin.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like what he's done with the lack of talent around him is stunning. He doesn't have the team success, but it's a team sport. And some people go, "Oh, he hasn't won crap." Well, Marcel Dion never won crap. Was he not a great player? Guys like Matt Sundin not a great player? Or there's a lot of great players in sports that don't win because it takes a team to win, and he hasn't had that luxury. And he's had some great seasons, but I mean, I think when it's all said and done, if it were to end right now, I mean, I think eventually people would look back and go, "Man, he's one of the greatest players to ever wear the uniform." And it's not just because of the numbers. He's done great things at the biggest times as well. He's had a flair for the dramatic ever since he came into the league, and I think it would be part of the legacy would be it's a shame that the team was never assembled around him to maximize his career. He still has time. He's not done. He's got 2 goals in the first 2 games, and I think he's going to have a really good year. And the type of player that he is, I think mitigates physical, slowing down because he's so cerebral. He's such a high hockey IQ on the ice that if he loses, a little bit of a step, he'll make up for it in the way he thinks of the game. So I think that he's got some good years left in him, and I've gotten to know him really well over the years, and from vulnerable moments where I know things have bothered him being said about him, and he's been bothered by things that I've said about him, and we've talked it out, and I gave him the advice that I would give anybody that don't take the criticism of people that you wouldn't seek out their advice on that subject. Don't value it. Don't give it air and let it bother you. Like if I was a plumber and some guy was criticizing the way I was a plumber that was an accountant, I go, well, why am I taking your criticism? You're an accountant. You're not a plumber. So like why let the people that know nothing about the sport bother you? With their critique of you. And he said, he's like, Dad, that's a really good way of looking at it. So, even as like a radio guy, like we get a lot of that. Not nearly the same level as you guys as pro athletes, but like
You see it though; it's more visible almost.
yeah, it's like, and ultimately, like we want to react to it, right? Because anything negative is easier to react to than anything positive. One negative comment has the physiological effect on your brain as 20 positive comments. And we want to be liked. We want people to agree with us, or we want people to appreciate what we do. And when they don't, we want to fight that battle. We don't want to join the group that already likes us. So, but all said and done, I mean, he's a great player. I mean, he's grown up. He's got a couple of kids now. He's married. It's wild because I've been there through his whole career, and I hope that he has the team success that I think he just so richly deserves because he's such a great player.
Yeah, he's one of the best Flyers of all time, and someone I've loved sticking up for over the years. And when he does well, I think every diehard Drew fan is just smiling deep down inside because of the success that he has and how much everyone respects him as a leader. Obviously, the fight against Seattle, to see Nate Thompson, jumping a guy who went after him, and it was a fun win for the Flyers last night. Again, we're talking on October 19th. This will come out a little bit later. For you, there's some crazy storylines you've covered there in your decade plus covering the Flyers. You have I believe it was the Peter Laviolette situation where Dry Island. You have those party years with Hardenall and Richards and Carter and Giroux and the young guys on a lot of fun, and a really a kind of a crazy call by Patrick Kane away from Game 7. There's
Briz years.
Briz. I was going to say you got the Briz years. You have the Hackstall generation. You have not generation, the Hextall years. You have the Hextall years. You have the now new version of the Flyers where kind of the old Flyers guard that was always around and always involved in the team has really kind of turned over to some fresh front office and a fresh coaching staff. And the Broad Street Bully thing is still around and marketed, but it's not the same anymore. It's adapted to the new game. What's been some things over the years that have highlighted you that trigger some good stories? Obviously, I've touched on a lot of different things there.
Yeah, the Lavi years were a lot of fun. Because when he came in, like 2000, he comes in, I believe it's early December 2009, and they didn't play well right away. I think the first like 12 games, I think they went like 8-1-2 or something like that. Like they weren't good, and eventually they caught fire and they bought in, and the path to the final was a fortuitous one. Washington got knocked out by Montreal because the Yarrow Alak was so great, and they end up in the conference final with home ice over Montreal because Flyers were the 7th seed and Montreal was the 8th seed, getting in, on the shootout with Bush. So that was a wild, wild year. I mean, I remember being in Montreal at Game 4. Flyers lost Game 3. It was 2-1, and then Game 4, I think it was a Saturday afternoon game, and they were always up to hijinks in Montreal. And everybody kept going off the ice with skate issues early in the game. And I was watching it across from the bench where the backup goalie stands on the other side of the ice there. And so I think it was Johan Backlund at the time who was the backup because they had so many injuries at the goalie position between Leighton and Bush and everybody else. And players kept coming off and having to stone their skates. And we're like, what is going on? And we come to find out there was like sand on the carpet. And when that gets on a skate blade, it feels like there's a burr. And so we had to get all this paper and lay all this paper down so that the players weren't getting this sand. And we're like, why is there sand here? It's like Montreal's up to something here. And I remember after the game, I was kind of set up in the hallway right outside the coach's office. And I had my computer like on a stool. And I'm starting the post-game show with like a mic on a little stand there. And they're coming off the ice, and I'm talking on the air, and I just got jacked in the ribs. I'm like, Jesus. And I turn over and look, and it's Lavi, and he's like, fuck yeah. He's so pumped up. And, it was awesome. It was a lot of fun, and that was a crazy run. But, yeah, like the Briz years, like he was such a JO.
Yeah, what was his deal?
He was just so caught up in trying to be entertaining, and it was uncomfortable. He wasn't funny. He was an asshole, and he sucked. So all the money went to his head, and then Hexy was, Hexy was my guy as a kid. It was my idol and stuff, and it didn't work out, and things got crazy at the end with Hexy, but when I got let go, when I got fired in radio 2 years ago on Halloween. The next day I woke up and I had a long text message from Hexy, just saying, hey, I heard you got let go. I heard what happened and everything, and blah, blah, blah. It's a real nice message from him. And, he didn't know how much I appreciated that. He didn't have to do that. And,
no.
He's a good man, but it didn't work here. It was unfortunate, but, just over the years, the people that I see game in and game out, like Zach Hill and Joe Seville from the Flyers PR, we hang out a lot, and I depend on those guys a lot to help me get players and stuff like that, and they've been great, and so it's been a lot of fun. And it's weird growing up as your favorite team, and then you end up working for them. It's weird in a lot of ways, and there's still some pinch me moments, and my son goes on the bench and watches an NHL warm-up, and he has no idea that that's not normal. I remember saying to him right before I got fired in 2019, we were at a game, and I said, you want to go out on the bench and watch warm-up? And he's like, nah. I'm like, let's go out and watch the warm-up. I said to him, you never know when this could end. And like 4 days later, I got fired from the Fanatic. And like at that time, it kind of ended. I ended up coming back, obviously, and working directly for the team. But yeah, it's cool. There's been a lot of great moments, but I hope the ultimate great moment's still there, of winning the Cup. Sitting on the bench in 2010 after Chicago won it and watch them experience the Cup for the first time, all those guys, was pretty freaking cool. It was heartbreaking, but I sat there till 1 o'clock in the morning and watched their families come down on the ice and everything, and just watch them I mean, that's the Cup. I mean, that thing is, you got to go through hell to win that damn thing. And I can't imagine what it's like to earn it, because that's the only way you get it. You don't get it. You don't get the Cup. You earn it. And those guys earned it, and it was surreal. As a kid who played the game, and it was wild.
Grew up watching the Flyers. Now you're working for him. Now your son gets to see that, and the older he gets, he'll appreciate that. I had a friend whose dad worked in the building there when I was a kid, and I was able to go and get to know all the Zamboni guys.
Yeah.
I used to scrape the quarters out of the ground, out of the ice at the Spectrum during Phantoms games. This is probably 2008, 2000. Yeah, 2000.
They closed it in 09.
Yeah, so probably 07, 08, we would do the 715ers. I don't know if they still do that.
Yeah,
I would go.
That.
Yeah, go play in that. We may have played together. I was a little puppy playing house league, and we would go down, play the games, and do the whole day. I'll never forget it. We did it 7:15ers in the morning. Then we play. I think it was a Phantoms game at 1, or I forget what it was. We did a Flyers game at 1, and then the Phillies World Series game at night against the Rays. Game 3, I believe it was. Game 2. I did that day. I'll never forget that. So I have a lot of, kind of similar memories, I guess, to your son in the way that I was there for 2-3 years, and I got to skate on the ice and be a part of that, and that was a dream.
Yeah.
You talked about the Cup, and we'll finish with that. The Flyers, they are, revitalized. New team, some young blood injected, some old blood injected, but some really good veterans added to the team in all shapes and sizes, like an Ellis, who's a vet at the highest level, and then you have a Yandel who signs at a minimum but looks really good and moves the puck really well.
He's a good player.
I mean, for a minimum, I think somebody tweeted the other day, Broussard, him, and someone else for like $2 million is what the Flyers have. You may be able to quote Nate Thompson. There it was. 2.6. Yeah, I was like, that's pretty good. And that's what it takes. Like, if you look back to the good teams in any sport, I was actually talking to my cousin about this today. The Eagles Super Bowl run, they had like Garrett Blunt and Chris Long, and they had like good players. They were on, towards the end of their careers, but on single, year deals at minimum, veteran minimum, and they made major impacts and won football games down the line. And it seems like the Flyers are built to last this year, the coming years. What are your thoughts? Who's been your favorite addition to the team?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. Ristolainen's a guy who brings an element that they sorely need. We haven't seen him yet. I think we may see him Wednesday night.
Flyers fans are going to absolutely love him.
Yeah, he's a terror. I had him on my podcast when they first traded for him, and he goes, "I hope there's no kids listening, but I like to be a piece of shit out there." He's a nightmare to play against. And I talked to a lot of guys about what it was like playing against him, and they just said, you just always had to know when he was on the ice. They're going to like him. And I talked to Derek Broussard today, just coming off a 3-point game, and he's a great guy. A lot of the French-Canadian guys are always great to deal with, and like Gagne was a great guy to deal with. Danny Briere was my favorite guy to deal with ever. He's the best. I mean, if Ellis can stay healthy, he's a 3-zone defender. He's got great offensive instincts. He's a good defender who will mix it up physically, even though he's not the biggest of guys. Just truckloads of character. I think he's a huge addition because it's on the top pair. And the effect that it can have on the whole decor and slotting everybody properly is enormous. So I think he's the big one. But Cam Atkinson's another guy that's just like an infectious guy. Like, he does everything with maximum energy and excitement. And, he's a goal scorer. He's a shoot now, I'll answer questions later kind of guy, which they've sorely lacked. Before it was like, everybody was like, no, you shoot. No, here's the puck, you shoot. No, you shoot. And then, if you're 3-on-1 and there was no shot on goal because everybody wanted somebody else to shoot it. If Cam Atkinson gets it, no, get it to me, I'll shoot it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's going to be a big one. And then these young players like Travis Konechny and Joel Farabee, I think, are so important to this team. Both are off to a really good start. But I think that they're just so important. Like, Farabee last year, 20 goals in 55 games, 30-goal pace, 24 goals into the 2019-20 season, 69 games for Konechny. That's a 30-goal pace. If those guys are 30-goal scorers and they can keep the puck out of their net, and I believe that they will, I totally believe in Carter Hart because I believe in not the skill set, because the skill set's there, but I believe in the mental set what's between the years of Carter Hart, and I've got to know him really well. I believe in this kid so much that they have all of the boxes checked to be one of those teams that needs to take care of business in the regular season, get in, get hot, to be healthy, and they can go on a serious run. So, there's a lot of things, and there's some luck involved in winning a cup, but yeah, I mean, they got a lot of character, and you bring in guys like Broussard, and a lot of buddies of Kevin Hayes are here, and Jans is just a stone cold riot. I mean, the guy's hilarious at every turn. So, I mean, he just crashed the post-game show the other night. He's like, my name was on the board. I don't know where I'm supposed to go. And he's like, but I'll just come in and talk to you. And so he just crashed the post-game show. And
I saw him on TV the other night. I saw him on TV the other night just tapping his glove on the bench, and he's kind of singing along to the song on TV. And I'm like, yeah. And again, I've listened to Spittin' Chicklets a lot, so he's a big personality on there, and he's buddies of Wit and all those guys. And
he's a great guy.
Yeah. Well, Jason, dude, I really appreciate you being gracious with your time. Jason, for those that don't know, and Jason may not know, has been a mentor of mine, someone I grew up watching, listening to, and someone who I've heard a lot of radio from and admire his work, and really appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you your friendship now and a mentorship, and I look forward to watching the Flyers this year, listening to Flyers Daily Podcast. Check Jason out, guys. You can follow Jason on Twitter at Jason Myrt, MYRT. Love what you do on Twitter, man. Love what you're doing on all your stuff, and I appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you having me, man. I love talking to you, and I'm rooting for you guys to get a win every week, because I know that you work your bag off, man, to make a career of it. And when you got cut from the Giants, you probably thought it was over, but then you caught a fucking touchdown pass last year, and you're like, it ain't over till I say it's over. Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor?
Hell no. Hell no. Hell no.
I root for guys like you that appreciate every day and work your butt off to stay in the league. So anytime you want me on, I come on.
Jason, thanks, brother. Good luck on the call this year. Have a blast, and we look forward to following you. Go Flyers.
Thanks, man.